May I call upon stage Mr. Rajneesh Kumar, ex-chairman of State Bank of India and an independent board member of various companies, to join us on stage for this very, very special fireside chat with Mr. Avinash Gupta. Can we have a huge round of applause for both the gentlemen?
First of all, thank you for Mr. Kumar just drove all the way from Meerut. So, big thank you for him to be here today. For as I said, State Bank of India really kind of amazes me, and in terms of depth of talent, in terms of capability, and I think Mr. Kumar kind of exemplifies that in many ways. He was, after retiring for a year or so, an advisory director for us. So I had got a good chance to get a perspective. And after that, I met many of the other state bankers, and I'm amazed. Mr. Kumar is also a director on many boards, including HSBC, on the and L&T and Mastercard, and also a big fan of the startup world. Yeah. So where he's really been kind of helping a lot of startups pull things together whenever they land into trouble and otherwise. So I think the idea here was to talk a little bit about corporate governance, sir. We are a little bit tight on time. I know. I know, and I picked on some points in my earlier comments where I said that when we talk to investors, when we talk to the external world, a lot of the challenges people perceive or otherwise around governance as well. So we are sitting in a very nice hotel here, and just to share a story which is about governance, I would say corporate governance, and I'll take names as well. It's okay. So if you guys go to Bombay frequently, anybody been to Bombay recently? No. So Bombay is not that bad a place. It's all right. So next to Bombay Airport, there's a Hyatt Regency. After COVID, hotels have really bounced back, right? The Hyatt Regency is still closed. It closed over COVID. It hasn't opened because at that point in time, and the hotel world, as you know, has the concept of owner and management. You own a hotel and somebody else manages for you. That Hyatt Regency is owned by somebody and it's managed by Hyatt. And there were issues around salary payments and stuff. And then, in the Bombay context, that hotel closes, not open. Just the opposite of that, the Taj Hotel guys, which is owned by the Tatas, they also have many hotels which are owner-owned and managed by them. Many of the owners did not pay salaries over COVID. The Tata guys said, we will pay the salaries of all the employees, doesn't matter. So I think that's a little bit of governance, and the Indian hotel stock price is where it is. It is nearly 60-70% I think of the sector. If you add up all the other hotels, they don't add up to the revenue of Indian hotels, nor to the EBITDA of Indian hotels and the market cap. So I think governance is very important. But enough of me talking. Maybe, sir, what I'd like to ask you to share is that given all your experience and working in State Bank, working with startups, working with the various boards you are, where do you see the corporate governance world evolving? Some of the challenges, some of the takeaways which you've had over the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. So I come from the banking sector and I spent almost 40 years in a public sector bank, which is State Bank of India. And for the banking sector, the corporate governance, which I have seen, it has evolved a lot. So before, I would say 91, it was all sort of prescriptive, whatever government told, whatever Reserve Bank of India told. You didn't have to do much other than doing a deposit mobilization campaign. But over a period of time, and particularly after the liberalization of the economy, there have been huge changes both in the Indian economy, in the Indian banking sector. The issues around corporate governance, risk management. So the whole world has changed in the last 30 years, I would say. And the banking has become a very complex business, unlike many other companies where you have just maybe a single product or maybe some few products, but banking is that way very complex. And India, all of us know that public sector banks 1969 and 1980, these were the two watershed years. And The issue from public sector banks perspective is that we are regulated by Reserve Bank of India, and the administrative oversight rests with DFS. So sometimes there can be issues also. There can be sometimes conflicting guidelines also. DFS may want something, RBI may want something, and then you are in a bind. Obviously, of course, you can't afford to. One is that one cannot afford to go, antagonise anybody, but at the same time, it becomes a very delicate balance, and RBI has all the powers to penalize you and ensure compliance. So this is one challenge which is unique to the public sector banks in India. But otherwise, even if there is Reserve Bank of India, there is DFS, what I have felt, and particularly I am speaking from my experience in the State Bank of India, that there is sufficient and enough elbow rooms if you want to run the bank the way you want. Till such time, obviously, you remain within your remit, and there would be certain expectations, particularly, say, for example, social banking. And but otherwise, in SBI, I never felt constrained by the fact that we are under DF. Never felt that constraint. And even you were speaking about YONO, which is a very, which has become a fine example of if a public sector organization wants to do something, it can do something. So it is not that DFS would say, "Why are you doing it?" No, it is a board's decision. It is the management's decision to plan to do it. And when you are doing an exercise of this massive scale, there would be mistakes committed, which you realize much after that this would have been done this way, not this way. But you can't do anything. So what I'm saying is the point which I'm trying to make, that within certain boundaries, there is sufficient freedom to operate.
Great, sir. So maybe just to let you do the talking, which is more important. In terms of some of the other experience you've had on independent boards, non-banking and startup, and I know that personally you did a lot of work at BharatPe to pull things together. Are there things, any learnings from there you want to kind of share?
So one is as you mentioned, I sit on two type of boards. One are the typical large size corporations and corporate boards of HSBC, L&T, Hero Motors, Ambuja Cement. So they run in a different manner because the systems, processes, guidelines, everything is in well said, you operate them. When it comes to startup world, one that this is all last 10 years probably where this has really taken off. And what has happened that there may not be any policies whatsoever to begin with. Suppose a startup or a company has been started by two people. Where do they have time to write all the policies which you will find in a large corporate? And so that is a challenge for the startup. Then what has happened that they have not kept pace in terms of putting the governance structure in place parallelly. Governance does not necessarily mean, sometimes we mistake it that bureaucracy. It's not bureaucracy, but when an organization grows from 2 people to say 2,000 people, it cannot be governed the same way. You have to put guardrails, you have to have all the key management personnel in place, you have to have policies in place, and that is where the problem happened with many startups in India. So the ideal mix would be, and this I always say, is that startups or fintechs, whatever, like fintechs is a subset of startups, and so the energy which is there, so that must be harnessed and that should not be this. But somewhere they need some experienced people to guide.
Right. And you always been prodding me, saying that startups we should help more. So absolutely right. So just maybe just while listening to Mr. Kumar, I had a few other kind of thoughts. One is obviously when we the rest of the world is fairly quite different to India. India is very much promoter owned, and I think the Indian promoter is a great entity, great animal. To make things happen in India, you need a promoter. It's very difficult to do business on the ground without the promoter who does it. So hats off to them. But that whole conflict of the promoter and a purely board controlled, professionally run business can be quite challenging. So we see that in our business. So when we talk to a board controlled, professionally run business, the requests and asks are quite different. And the requests and asks from a promoter owned business are quite different as well.
Yeah, but there are many promoter-driven business where, like boards also play a very critical role, and particularly if these are listed entities, then the governance norms, listing norms, SEBI guidelines, onus on the independent directors. So even if there are businesses owned by families or promoters, but if particularly if they are not private limited, then I think governance standards have to be the same. And from my own experience, I can tell that independent directors, they can really be independent and assertive.
I agree with that, and I think sometimes always one can disagree with the amount and kind of guidance and regulation and some of the SEBI and all the other guidelines. But yeah, those are all good in the long run, and I think overall benefit. So maybe just
Especially
one
they are not overdone.
as long as they're not overdone and over enforced.